All right, looks like we got sound this time because I can see it right there this time. All right, let's get into it. MMA people. I'm gonna still do a quick sound check, but we got a lot to discuss. Quick sound check. All right, we're good. Okie dokie. So the MMA, or let's say the UFC Mount Rushmore. All right. So the criteria that I have for my Mount Rushmore is for this is just based on impact that one has had on the sport as far as eyes that they've drawn to the sport throughout the world. Okay. Not just in the United States, not just in Japan or whatever, how much global impact each athlete has had. So, whew, this is this is something that you can kind of play with a little bit. It's not anything where I don't think people should get so hung up on like, oh, my Mount Rushmore is better than your Mount Rushmore, unless you just have a terrible Mount Rushmore, because there are terrible ones. But as long as you got the there's probably about 6 or 7 guys that you can kind of rotate through there and balance it out either way. As long as you have 4 of those 7, then your Mount Rushmore is usually good. So what I got, I'm going in order by error. Okay. So for number one, I have, which I kind of played with this one a little bit back and forth. I got Hoist Gracie at number one. He's the first one to usher in the UFC, obviously, and he put Brazilian Jiu Jitsu in particular on the map. And now you can't go into an MMA gym and train without doing some type of jujitsu. Next, I have Chuck Liddell, the Iceman. Chuck the Iceman Liddell. Yes, I have Chuck because Chuck was an icon. And actually, I also think that you could switch him and Tito Ortiz around in this slot here, particularly because they had a rivalry that's iconic, and they were both champion and they were both very well marketed. Okay, Dana White was his Tito Ortiz manager, and I believe he managed Chuck at a point in time as well. But again, I have Chuck Liddell. He won that rivalry, and although Tito did he did become champion first, I think Chuck Liddell had more of an impact. They were both in movies, I'm sure, actually. But I remember Chuck was just everywhere. And when I thought of the UFC, I thought of Chuck Liddell. Now, I remember for me personally, and unless you're 38 and up, I don't want to hear you talking about, oh, I was watching Hoist Gracie and all this stuff when it first dropped, because you weren't. Okay? Because 1993, I wasn't even born yet. I'm born in 94. So I started watching, my first actual introduction to the UFC was Chuck and Tito. That was my very first introduction. And when I became a huge fan, which leads me to number 3, was Anderson Silva. Absolutely. So we got Hoist Gracie, Chuck Liddell, Anderson Silva, who I believe at least one point in time was definitely hands down the greatest fighter of all time. And I believe he still has a case for that. In fact, his body of work doesn't just disappear because He had some bad losses after coming back from a injury that most wouldn't even attempt to come back from. And and what he was able to do while he was champion is probably something that we're not going to see again. Definitely not in the foreseeable future. It looked like Izzy had a chance to get in range of that, but we see how that ended up. Okay, and That's not a shot at Israel Adesanya by any stretch of the imagination. Izzy is a great champion, but what Anderson Silva, the Spider, was able to do, he was able to capture the imaginations of so many different people. He fought in different organizations and promotions all over the world and became champion. His impact was crazy. He fought in different weight classes. I mean, this man as well fought in the same era as GSP. Now, that was supposed to be a super fight and it didn't happen. I don't think it didn't happen because of Anderson Silva personally. I think Anderson Silva would have gladly taken that fight. Now, on top of that, what else is Anderson? I mean, oh, he basically became the new prototype for what a middleweight fighter was going to be. Hence, Israel Adesanya, the style bender. Whose style do you think he was bending? He's bending Anderson Silva's style. That's where he got it. So definitely, I got Anderson in there. And then at number four, last but not least, the notorious. Yep, Conor McGregor. Conor McGregor is definitely number four on my Mount Rushmore for the UFC, particularly because I am going in order of first to last. I'm going in chronological order. So obviously we're going to start with Hoist, then we take it to Chuck. Chuck passes the baton to Anderson, and Anderson hands it off to Conor McGregor to bring us home. Because yes, Conor McGregor is taking the sport to a whole nother level. Okay, now I still tend to lean on the fact that MMA really took off to what it is now during COVID times because it was, I believe, the first sport that was back on TV. One of the first for sure. So that played a hand in its popularity that we're seeing today. But Connor got it to that point where it was super mainstream marketable. Okay, the fight with Floyd Mayweather definitely definitely took it to the next level there as far as popularity goes. And then when we get actually when we go back to Conor McGregor, he's also made stars for the UFC. A lot of stars' names have been made off of McGregor's name, and that's not a shot at anyone by any means as well. So, I mean, we look at Nate Diaz, who he was probably going to be a star at some point, but not at the level that he is now. I mean, he is super popular. We got Nate, uh, Sean O'Malley is trying to make a name off of just being a McGregor duplicate. Okay, all these people that call him out, left and right and left. Dustin Poirier is a global star now because of him beating Conor McGregor these last two times. All right, so I mean the names go on. When you attach yourself, that's why so many people actually are trying to attach themselves to Conor McGregor because of what he can do to one's popularity, pretty much overnight. So that's my Mount Rushmore for the UFC as far as impact goes. Now, I also have a Mount Rushmore for accomplishments. Okay. And it's a little bit different. Actually, it's a lot of bit different. None of the names on the impact list made the accomplishment list for me personally. So the Mount Rushmore that I have for achievements, accomplishments, stuff like that, accolades, I have John Jones. Oh, I'm sorry. Anderson Silva is on there as well. He's on both. So I got John Jones, Anderson Silva. I have Demetrius Johnson and Daniel Cormier. I mean, what these four individuals were able to do in their careers to me is really just it's unmatched. So we can go John Jones first. Obviously, he's the youngest champion ever, and he's done nothing but win, 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 win. And you could sit here and talk about the Gustafson fight. John Jones won the Gustafson fight. If you didn't know that, all right, he won both Gustafson fights, second by finish. The first fight was a great fight, but just because you're in a great fight doesn't mean you lost. John Jones won both round 4 and 5 decisively. Okay, so those 2 rounds are not debatable. Go to round 3. Same thing with Dominic Reyes. Look at the end of those fights. Look at who wanted it more at the end of those fights. All right. It was John Jones in the Thiago Santos fight. I honestly I've watched that fight now at least 6 times, and I'm just so over that Thiago Santos almost beat John Jones. Yeah, judge gave one of the judges gave it to Thiago Santos, but one of the judges gave a round to or gave the fight to Paulo Costa versus Sean Strickland recently. Just because the judge gave one of the fighters a fight, that doesn't necessarily always equate to the fact that it was that closely contested. All right. I believe there was a fight with I feel like Cheeto Vera versus Corey Sandhagen was a split decision for some reason. And that was pretty one sided, very one sided. Point is that doesn't mean everything. It's not the end all be all. Is a judge one of the judges gave it to okay. What about the other two? And what does it say on that record? A W, okay, for John. So on top of that, if you look at the John is not only just what I was talking about with Anderson Silva when it comes to the prototype. Now you can't even you can't get into the light heavyweight division unless you're 6'4", 6'4", walking around 230, 235. If you're not 6'4", walk around to around 230, 235, 240, then you're probably not even going to be in the light heavyweight division at this point. Why? Because that is the precedent that John Jones has set for the division. Okay, they had to catch up to his game, and now you see guys that are 6'2", 6 foot, fighting down at welterweight. Okay, seriously, that's how much he's evolved the game. They had to catch up. So again, you got your Gustafsons, you got your Reyes's, you got your Johnny Walkers of the world. You've got all these different guys. Now look at Alex Pereira. Okay, these guys are Yuri Prohaska, Jamal Hill. These guys are all 6'4", 6'5", 6'3" at least. Okay, these are taller, longer, rangier, athletic guys, and they're that's the new prototype for 205. He changed the game in that way as well. So, I mean, I can honestly go on and on and on about just some of the ways that he's actually been over underrated. Okay, now we go to Anderson Silva. I've already broke that down on his accomplishments and the things that he was able to do. Okay, so the things that Anderson Silva was able to do in the amount of time he was able to do it is remarkable, and it's unmatched. So we've already talked about that. Now Demetrius Johnson, we haven't talked about yet. Let's talk about Demetrius Johnson and the disrespect that Demetrius Johnson had received during his time at the UFC. Okay, after watching what happened with Aljamain Sterling, I really scratched my head, and we're going to get to Aljamain's management as well, because whoever the hell is managing Aljamain Sterling should have been fired long time ago because they're working definitely not in his best interest. All right, so Demetrius Johnson, this man has I don't even know how 12 title defenses, different promotion. Now he's over there, different promotion, different set of rules, still killing it, putting in work, serious work. Okay, Demetrius Johnson, in my opinion, is one of the most well-rounded athletes, not just fighters. Demetrius Johnson is what I would say one of the most well-rounded athletes that I've ever witnessed. Okay, I mean this dude is seriously, you could put him in so many different sports and he would succeed. Demetrius Johnson is a freak. Although he's not very tall. I mean, with 5'4". Sorry if I'm cutting you short, DJ. But seriously, I mean, but DJ is serious, and his accomplishments are serious. There's no way that he couldn't have been marketed. In my opinion, I just don't understand it. Demetrius Johnson, there's no way that he could not have been marketed better. And so I'm gonna say definitely what he achieved. He got a spot on my accolades Mount Rushmore for the UFC. And then last but not least, DC, Daniel Cormier. Yeah, I said it. Although he fought a little bit past where he should have. But you guys got such recency bias that y'all don't remember. A lot of y'all who talk crazy don't tend to remember what actually happened with DC's career. All right. The only person that had beat him was John Jones. All right. And the second time John Jones won, he was popped for a dirty test. So that was a no contest. So he only had one loss on his record to the GOAT. Then he had beat Stipe. So now he's champ. Then he goes and defends the title against Derek Lewis. Before he fought Stipe, people were asking him in the press conferences, "Oh, if you win this fight, do you think that makes you the greatest of all time?" And he says, "Well, I don't know that or not, but I know it puts me in the talks." Afterwards, people were saying he's the greatest of all time. Goes out and fights Stipe, beats him for 3.5 rounds straight. Then, body shots started happening, and it was crazy. Uh, that was actually that the way that that trilogy turned out to be really was the most disappointing um part of part of my MMA experience, to be honest, that I could think of. I was hurt when DC uh lost to Stipe. And in the third fight, he got poked in the eye, couldn't see for like 3 rounds, something like that. I mean, it was crazy. But again, the only fighter we gotta this man is an Olympian 2 times over, all American wrestler, goes into Strike Force, dominates, okay, in the heavyweight division, by the way, comes to the UFC, jumps down to 205, dominates everything not named John Jones. But he did beat Anthony Johnson, who John Jones never fought. Beats him twice. Has good fights against him. Now, moving forward, after his fight with John Jones and John Jones ended up getting the title taken from him. Okay, the UFC stripped him of his title. So now DC fights for the vacant title, wins it obviously, defends his title, just defends and defends and defends, goes up. Who else? No one else has held the light heavyweight and heavyweight titles at the same time. Brandy Couture did it, but he did not hold them things at the same time. Okay. John Jones has did it, but he did not hold them at the same time. I think that needs to be noted. All right. Holding those belts at the same time, only ones to do that in the men's division are Conor McGregor, Henry Cejudo, Daniel Cormier. Okay. Daniel Cormier. So make no mistake, Daniel Cormier is his resume is up there with anybody's. I can make a case for Daniel Cormier versus anybody. So that's that with the Mount Rushmores. I gave you my impact Mount Rushmore for the UFC as far as just impact on getting the sport recognized by new faces. Again, I gave you the accolades and achievement Mount Rushmore. So close. All right. Let's let's talk about Aljamain Sterling's management real quick. Let's talk about that. So I noticed a lot of people seem to agree on the fact that Hunter Campbell was pretty much strong arming Aljamain Sterling and trying to manipulate the way that Aljamain viewed the situation, which every most people who have chimed in on it, I actually everyone who I've seen chime in on it afterwards has pretty much agreed. It's been pretty much unanimous consensus that Hunter Campbell was manipulating Aljamain Sterling and not having his best interest in mind. Okay, he was feeding him a bunch of bullshit. Oh, you're a beast. You've been looking great. You're in your prime. You're about to go on a historic run, and you can take all this guy's fans. I mean, there's never going to be another Connor, but he's he's got a major fan base, and you got an opportunity to take that. And the pay per views. Oh my, forget about it. What? So feeding a bunch of BS. BS. For one, according to Aljamain, the pay-per-views weren't that good. Why? Because the UFC is trying to make it seem like Sean O'Malley is a bigger star than he actually is. So they got that card, and Aljamain's like, all right, I'll take it. Okay, I'll fight him. I'm gonna get at least, if nothing else, I'll get a huge payday. Not even the case because people didn't buy that card. Not very many people are buying pay-per-views for $85 to see Sean O'Malley. Not as of yet, at least. So he feeds him that lie. Then he's like, "Oh, we're not, we're not forcing you to fight." Well, no, you're not forcing him to fight, but you're forcing him into a corner, which also shows that the management of Aljamain Sterling is not in Aljamain Sterling's best interest, not working in Aljamain Sterling's best interest, because he sat there like a coward And he sits there and he's just watching Hunter Campbell talk and watching Aljamain talk, and he's just kind of twiddling his thumbs. And he doesn't have much to say, anything to say in that clip. I didn't see him say anything, but he did make like an eye roll or something like that. Y'all go back and watch the doc. It's on there. But what my point is, if his management was working in his best interest, he would have said, "Do not take this fight." And what the threat was, okay, you don't have to fight Sean O'Malley. We'll just give him an interim title fight against Henry Cejudo, perhaps. If Aljamain Sterling's management was working, because I'm not going to say if he was thinking, because I'm sure he knew what I'm about to say. If Aljamain Sterling was playing smart ball, if his management was on his side and his management was working in his best interest, then they would have said, "Hey, Aljo, look, you're hurt. You're the champion. You are on your time, and so is everyone else in the division and the UFC until a certain what is it, 500 days or some shit, a year, until that time elapses. There, everybody is on your time as far as the UFC and the bantamweight division. So right, get right. And if they, for one, if they give Sean O'Malley an interim title or interim title shot, and if he wins, then guess what? When you fight Sean O'Malley, it'll be a much bigger pay-per-view. So waiting will actually be in your best interest, because what are they going to do when you come back to fight and you say you're ready? What are they going to do? They're going to say, "Oh, well, we don't know who you're going to fight." No. If Sean O'Malley wins this interim title, hypothetical interim title that they would have been fighting for, that he would have been fighting for, Sean, then let him do that. So then that way, when Sean and Aljo fight, when you all fight, it would be a unification bout, which is going to be way bigger than you just fighting him as a contender. Which I don't even know if he was the number one contender at the time. I don't know if Sean O'Malley was even the number one contender at the time. And so if Aljamain Sterling's management was in his favor, that's what they would have said. Like, look, that works best for you, because you not only get a chance to, if you wait it out, you get a chance to heal, and the fight becomes bigger because now it's a unification title fight as opposed to a regular title fight. It makes all the more sense in the world. So didn't do that. Aljamain even went as far to say that his management was putting pressure on him to take the fight. The UFC, my management, my teammates are putting pressure on me to take the fight. Really? Your management was putting pressure? I don't know what you mean, your teammates, because that would. I'd be curious. I'd love for an elaborate answer on that. But management putting pressure on you, I get that. Absolutely, like 100%. I understand what that means. That means that management wants to get paid, and the UFC is probably giving them some incentives to get Aljamain to take this fight. All right, so let's be clear about that. Aljamain Sterling needs to get rid of whoever his manager is. All right, he needs to get rid of him. He's not working in his best interest, and that's not good. I mean, Aljamain really missed out on a pretty, I'd say, good opportunity there. And he was a favorite. I had Aljamain favored by a long shot, and now that I found out, I knew something was off. And now we find out that he was fighting injured. He was fighting injured. Oh, Sean was fighting injured too. He hurt himself. 6 weeks. He couldn't even grapple. Right. Okay. Okay. But that's where I stand with that whole situation. Aljamain really somebody send this to Aljamain. Somebody send this clip to Aljamain and let him in on this. Let him see what I'm saying. Somebody get this clip to Aljamain Sterling. Let him see what I'm saying. All right. Okay, now we're gonna move on. Alex Pereira. A lot of people have Alex Pereira 5-1 on Israel Adesanya. The five being two in kick. What is it? 4-1. The two in kickboxing. The two in kickboxing and the one in the UFC to Israel's one. So that would be 3-1. And I seen another number though, but I have it much higher than 3-1. So he beat him in glory twice. Then he beat him in the UFC. Okay. Then Israel beat Alex, but then Alex beats Jan Blachowicz, who beat Israel. Then Alex wins the title in light heavyweight, which Israel failed to do. So that's a win over him, by the way. Whether and I don't think the average person realizes that. Yes, it is. These are highest level of competitors we're talking about. They're playing. They're keeping tabs on everything. Okay, when you're a competitor, you compete, and you compete no matter where you're at and what you're doing. You're always keeping some type of little score. All right, when you're a true competitor, you're always keeping. This isn't even about being a fighter, but to be a fighter at this level, you have to be a competitor as well. And so they're keeping track. Oh yeah, I guarantee you that. So I'm at 5-1 because we got the 3-1 with their actual fighting of each other. And then we have Alex doing two things that Israel failed to do, which is beating Jan and achieving double champ status at the light heavyweight division. But then check this: Alex beat Sean Strickland. Alex helped train Sean Strickland. Sean Strickland beats Izzy. That's now 6-1. Ain't got enough fingers for this. 6-1. Then on top of that, Jamal Hill goes and gets advice from Israel Adesanya. What can Israel tell you about? I mean, at this point, when it comes to Alex, except for how to lose to him. He got one win over him. He did. But I don't think that was probably the one win he got over him was probably up to that point his worst outing in the exchanges. He was probably getting the worst out of the exchanges, all the exchanges that they had ever had in all their fights. The one fight that he won, I think he was actually losing as opposed to most of their other fights. He was winning a lot of those fights. All right. So Alex then beats Jamal Hill, who goes and got advice from Izzy and all this stuff. So now that's 7-1. That is a win. Absolutely, it is. Make no mistake about it. Look at Israel's face when it happened. That tells you it was a win. I'm telling you, it was a win. It was a win. and his face said it all. He was defeated when Jamal Hill was defeated. So was Israel Adesanya. Alex just has this man's number at this point. It's like, I mean, like a boogeyman or something. It's like his arch nemesis. He cannot get away from this. Like it's like a shadow over him. So keep keep that in mind. And I may even be missing a couple others. There might be like two two other wins floating out there right now that I'm not even thinking of on top of my head. But I kept track of those seven right there. Those seven are very easy for me to keep track of because you watch them in real time and you see you if you know how competitors think, you know that they're keeping tabs, they're keeping score. You know this. Some of you may have even lived it. So y'all let me know what you think. I'm gonna jump off here. MMA House on MMA Block. We in the middle of MMAville. And yes, we keep it real.